So I'm Kyle. My background is in user experience design and front-end development, mostly in the biotech space, a little bit in the fintech space. Currently, I'm the growth lead at Great Expectations. I founded the developer relations program there. I founded the Great Expectations community. I've also led partnerships with Snowflake for Great Expectations with Snowflake, with Acro, Astronomer, Databricks, and a bunch of other tools that you see at today. So a little bit about Great Expectations. We have 10,000 members on Slack. We have about six. We're actually just shy. So Great Expectations. I called my shot. I missed it. So greatexpectations.io/Slack helped me get there. We had 6,000 organizations in the community. We're found in about 26 different time zones. We have 358 contributors. I consider them all my best friends. We have about 9.5 million monthly downloads on PyPy. And then our core persona is a data engineer, also data scientist, ML engineer, data analyst, data practitioner, just someone people who care about the quality of their data. And people who are curious about this photo, I was just jealous that Maggie had something that she loved in her photo, so this is me hugging my favorite sandwich. All right, so let's get into partnerships. Partnerships are good. That's it. All right, no. All right, does anyone have any good examples of successful partnerships? It does not have to be in tech. Feel free to yell them out. Go ahead.
Peanut butter and jelly.
Oh,
Excellent.
Dolly Parton and Miley Cyrus.
Yeah, we might have a good example later on about that one. Any other ones? All right, I'll do some of my own. So we have some classics or ones that people know. We have Uber and Google. You have a map platform. You have a taxi app. You are enhancing the functionality of Google by including this taxi service when you're looking for directions. You're expanding the reach of Uber by getting access to the Google users. An absolute classic is Apple partnering with AT&T and Verizon. You have a smartphone. You have these networks to get you on the internet to make phone calls. This is a fruitful partnership for both. All right, so let's get into some more fun ones. Here are some in media. All right, so we have Pink, Lil Kim, Maya, and Christina Aguilera for Lady Marmalade. I'm sure everyone knows their work. We have Run DMC and Aerosmith. So basically what's great about these partnerships is they're all coming with their own unique audience, and they're going to be exposing that audience to one another and expanding their reach. And if you want to think about it from like maybe a product analogy, they're also enhancing their product by blending genres together and having almost a new offering. So you're putting together rock and roll, you're putting together rap, and you're creating a new genre that people can get excited about. We have Looney Tunes and Michael Jordan. So this is going to create a whole new generation of NBA fans. And then you're also going to get more parents to go to a movie theater to see a cartoon because they know who Michael Jordan is, something they can get excited about. Then you have a classic partnership. You have Godzilla and King Kong, which, a little bit of a contentious partnership, but still a successful one. All right, here's one you probably never thought about. I can probably guarantee you've never thought about it, is KFC and Crocs. So what could this possibly bring, this partnership? So I'm just going to show you the most beautiful thing my eyes have ever seen. We have KFC branded Crocs. So apologize for having this up right before lunch. I didn't realize I'd be doing this. But yes, when I see someone walk in Crocs with KFC fried chicken on it, I'm going to get hungry. And I'm also probably going to be pretty jealous about how comfortable they are in those Crocs. All right, so let's talk about open source partnerships. And the beauty of open source is that the tools are made that like anyone can contribute to them. They're often extensible, and this sets up tools for success when partnering. Sets these tools for success for partnering with other tools. All right, so I'm going to use the most popular slide right now. Boom, there it is. You haven't seen this one before. Yes, you have. You saw it in the last presentation. So Matt Turk's Mad Landscape, it just makes it clear that there's not a one solution fits all, data personas out there. You have to work well with others. Okay, so I'm going to go into some benefits of open source partnerships. So extra resources by partnering with other open source communities. Well, one, when you're partnering with another tool, you get the extra resources of subject matter experts of that other tool. But then when you're working in open source communities, you get the power of those communities. So what this does is it helps you find and solve big complex problems faster. Because these communities have more access to you, they have the ability to publish their issues and ability to also solve their own issues. And this is going to be working outside of your development cycle. You do have to review, you do have to accept these PRs, make sure it makes sense for your tool, but that engineering work can happen outside. Also, your maintenance could go down when people take real ownership over their contributions. You'll find people that will do lots of different bug fixes, and then a classic contribution is fixing typos just to be a contributor, which I'm not complaining about because you might even find a typo here. I could use my own contributor for typos. All right, moving along. Increase reach. So you're going to increase your reach, like we said in those other examples, by exposing yourself to other audiences. But what's interesting is you might expose yourself to different use cases that your tool doesn't have yet, or even new markets. So there can be that contributor that comes around, they see your tool, and they go, oh, wow, this is close enough to my use case. I'm going to be that key contributor that gets it there. So then when the next person comes around, it's more likely that they're going to adopt your product. A good example of this for us is Great Expectations started more in the healthcare, focusing on healthcare problems. So there are lots of tests for your data for healthcare. And then some people from the financial industry came around and were like, oh, wow, you could test your data. The tests don't quite fit for us yet, so we're going to contribute some tests. So then the next person that comes around that's in that industry is more likely to adopt. And a real example is Capital One is one of our biggest contributors. They contributed a bunch of tests around credit card validation and security. So now when that next company comes around that offers that type of service, they're going to be more likely to adopt. And by expanding your community, by partnering with other communities, you're going to get more opportunities to find those people that are going to help fill out your product for that use case. So enhanced functionality. Think about the Uber and Google Maps. This was pretty straightforward. The Uber and Google Maps, you have the map platform, you have the taxi platform. Does Google want to make their own taxi platform and compete with Uber, that tool that already has product market fit, full functionality, or do they want to just adopt it onto their platform? So they enhance their functionality. Okay, increase credibility as a product and as a player in the space. This is where you get real momentum. By succeeding in these partnerships, you're going to get more partnerships. But something that's important to point out is that you have to give line of sight to how someone's going to accomplish this. So have good documentation, have content out there that shows how people were successful in integrating, whether it was a community member or if it was a product that you partnered with, so that people could see it's possible. You're bound to get more inbound interest if people can see how they'll get from A to B. Otherwise, you're going to have to find some really courageous people to help you accomplish that goal.
So our goal here is to have you guys walk away with like a clear roadmap of why you do it, who you do it with, and how you get it done. So let's talk about the people, right? We know why this is important, but who are the players here? So your community may look a little bit like this, or it may look a little bit like this. Equally fantastic, equally powerful, mutants or otherwise, we love it. But there are two kind of personas that we think about, regardless of how big your community is, the type of people that show up, whether your core maintaining team is huge or maybe it's a couple of people. There are a couple of roles for us to kind of represent in this collaboration process. So first and foremost is going to be our community or product manager. This may not actually be your official role, but you're standing in as the person to interface directly with the community and also do a lot of that problem discovery. So your goals here are, one, growing your community. You also want to gain that credibility, and you want to expand your product functionality either with your own resources, another community's resources, or people within your own community. So we go about this with a few different things. One is, and this is the most important, just being deeply connected with the people who are in your community, talking to them, asking them questions. What problems are they facing? How are they actually using the current open source project in their own environment? What's going well? What isn't going well? But really just kind of tying back the problem space to the people within your own community. The other thing is you want to make sure that your collaboration process is seamless. So by the time that people you're working with people who are going above and beyond and contributing back to something for the greater good, so it better be pretty damn easy for them to do that. So just real clear documentation about the kind of rules of engagement, who you should work with, what that looks like. I have Arun in the audience, who's one of the top contributors of Data Hub, and so I'm glad to see that we can make those things happen. And then the other thing is, even if you're not technically a product manager, bring in that product hat and help guide those decisions around design trade-offs, resolving blockers, and really just making sure that, again, when people are showing up to build, you're helping them do the damn thing. Last but not least, you gotta celebrate the people. We're all about the people. But so this is really giving people a shout out, helping them feel valued, and also kind of just building out their own network as well. So let's talk about who those builders are. These are gonna be contributing engineers. So these could be folks that are on your own team, right? So maybe you're actually maintaining the repo or the project itself, or they're folks within your own community, or they're folks within another community. But these are folks that are gonna be motivated by saving money by spending their own time. So there's we saw the diagram of all of the tools, right? There's a tool for every problem we could ever dream of, but those all cost money. So the open source solution is a great way to save the money, but kind of invest on the actual implementation side. These folks are also going to be motivated by making sure that these projects fit really nicely within their existing stack, so it can be a really seamless integration there. And then, of course, they also want to build their professional network. So we see this being done by contributing back to projects, so kind of what Kyle said, seeing something that maybe fits your use case, maybe 80%, and contributing back to get it to that 100%. They're going to be collaborating really closely with you, so you're building a really close partnership. And then they're building out their own network and their own kind of rapport of being a subject matter expert. And so you want to make sure that you're giving them the tools to do that and be successful there. So you have your community. There's another community. You've identified your players. Now it's time to partner up, people. We got to make it happen. So we've talked about why we collaborate. We talk about who the people are. Let's break it down into a few different phases. We're going to break these into 4 different steps. I'm going to go through this pretty quickly, but then we have a couple of case studies to demonstrate how we've done it in action. So first and foremost, discovery. This is where you're the community manager, the product manager, and you're working directly with folks in your community to understand what problems are out there. And also really taking the time to identify, is this a problem that we're best suited to solve? Or are there other communities or tools that are doing it well? And you want to do outreach there to kind of bridge that gap. Once you've identified your problem space, you want to actually start planning it, of course, scope it out. And this is also a critical stage where you are getting feedback early and often from your own community so that you know what you're building, why you're building it, and you have that work really cleanly scoped. Of course, during your development, this is where your engineer is coming in. Again, this could be someone who's on your maintaining team. It could be someone from your community or another community. But basically, you're building it out, getting it tested, and don't forget your documentation. Don't forget, it's part of the product. And then last but not least, this is critical. Really have a clear strategy around your promotion. Again, to help people understand kind of how things came to be, how they can use it, and also how they can contribute. So 4 steps, easy, right? I know that it can feel like a lot. What we continue to see time and time again is once you do this kind of one time through, it can feel like a little bit of a drawn out process, especially in a world where we're all trying to be as agile as humanly possible. But there's a really fascinating flywheel that happens that once you establish that pattern, folks in the community know how to kind of like lather, rinse, and repeat. And that flywheel kind of starts to take on its own identity with other people in the community driving it. So we're going to walk through a couple of examples, and Kyle's going to start it off.
Please don't. Please don't.
It was okay.
All right, we did. We didn't explode. All right, I'm going to go through a example here. All right, so I'm going to talk about the partnership between Astronomer and Great Expectations. I really think this partnership was destined to happen. Airflow helps you manage all the tasks you want to run, organized in a way that reflects their relationship and dependencies represented as a DAG. And Great Expectations is a tool that ensures the data you're managing in that DAG is as expected through tests or expectations. For companies who want to send their data from A to B with confidence, this is a match made in heaven. So I'm going to just quick value of Great Expectations through one of my favorite data horror stories. So a perfectly healthy person moves from Europe to the US and their insurance bill skyrockets. Well, this is because they went from being 1.8 meters tall, which is about 6 feet, and 180 pounds, to 1.8 feet tall and 180 pounds. So the insurer is curious of why this person's still alive, and yes, we're going to send you a massive bill because you're a huge risk. And then and the person on the other end is going to become a very sad Wario when they get this massive bill in there. So like healthcare is already hard. Let's stop these mistakes from happening before they happen, so we don't get these sad Warios. All right, so back to the relationship between Great Expectations and Astronomer. So Astronomer has worked very closely with their customers to build broad data platforms around Apache Airflow while working on data quality and validation layer of their data platforms. They noticed a trending request that people were asking to use Great Expectations, but they also had questions around best practices in using these two tools together and just around data quality in general. So this led to the Astronomer team reaching out to us. So we were really excited about this. I think I popped ahead there. Uh-oh. So we were really excited about this potential partnership and willing to invest resources in it, which is one of the benefits of a partnership. And this started the discussion on coming up with best practices around leveraging Great Expectations and Apache Airflow. And this could have just been content, and that would have been a great partnership to do together. But upon further discussion, it was clear that creating the Great Expectations Airflow provider made a lot of sense. So from there, we planned the work. We kept the interested community members in the loop for feedback and early testing. Some of these community members also became key contributors to the project, and soon enough, we released Great Expectations Airflow provider. You can see this now on the Astronomer registry. We completed this it was around 2020, like early 2020, and now it gets 380,000 downloads per month. So the momentum kept building. It's been really successful, and I'll go over sort of how we got there. So once the integration was complete, we announced the integration to our community, and we published the documentation. So here you'll see the documentation published on our respective websites. Make sure to link to each other. That's going to help that cross-community growth. And then my recommendation is with the release of the documentation and the product that you're putting out is to also have Hello World blogs. So this content is really friendly to share, and people who want to spread news are going to enjoy these pieces of content to be able to share. It also gives you the opportunity to shout out people in the community that made things happen. So a shout out to Brian Lavery, Nick Betham, Book Niederstick, and then on the Astronomer team, Pete DeJoy was a big part of it. And then on our side, Sam Bale was a massive part of making this happen. So one great thing about this announcement in the Hello World blog is now you can start to monitor your community for early adopters. This is an important part to get that early feedback, to learn about the use cases that people are applying your tool to. There will be bugs, and this is a good way to find them quickly. So some good QA. And then usually what we do is we will set up a community event a few weeks out, maybe a month out, so you can learn from those early adopters. You can maybe fix some bugs before the community event, but then also gives people time to think about the integration. So you're not just laying it on them at the event and then they have to come back. Like you're not going to get good questions that way. You'll get much better questions if people have time to think about it, read the material, and use it themselves. So doing all this promotion, doing the events, doing the blogs, sharing on your social media. Hopefully, what this leads to is other people picking it up. So it worked out for us. People picked up the news of the integration. I mean, it's people's jobs to do this. So give them something to share, and sure enough, you'll get some momentum. So I talked about community events a little bit. These are 2 recordings from community events that we did in our respective communities. So this is a great way to sort of get a spike of growth in your community. They hosted us, we hosted them. When you go to the other person's community event, you get to sort of share your expertise and give them an opportunity to come to your community to learn more about what you can provide. So for us, when we're at the astronomer, after we do the demo of the provider, if you want to learn more about data quality, if you want to learn more about how to use Great Expectations, come to our Slack, read our documentation. You get a good spike in growth, and then you're also giving people an opportunity to have a better user experience on the integration. So I want to point out this bottom event a little bit different. So this is, go like if you can get into different conferences. And you can get awesome recordings like this, that's great, but this is also an example of sort of an elevated piece of content where you bring in a third party. So again, works well with others, works well across the whole stack. So for here we have, which was a good marketing one, it's called the DAG stack, DBT, Airflow, Great Expectations. Sam Bell did a great job promoting this all around, and we were able to bring in that third party. 1, you get extra signal boosting. 2, we picked a good tool to get some exposure, of course, and we did it at Coalesce. But also what's really great about this third party is that it gives people the more end-to-end experience of where your tool fits. So your data is going from A to B, you're testing with Great Expectations, and then you can build your models in DBT. So someone can go, oh, I get it, like this is where your tool fits in my whole experience. Okay, so rounding it out. So from here, this is talking about that flywheel part of when the community picks it up. We did all the promotion. People are very aware about it. People are excited about it. They're using it, and now they're starting to enhance the offering. So that momentum is going to continue to build, and you're going to want to make sure that you feed that flywheel. So as a community manager, if I put my community manager hat on, I would say one of the biggest piece of advice I can give is having a positive feedback loop. A positive feedback loop means that when someone does something good in your community, you shout that out in different ways. It does 2 things. 1, it shows that you appreciate your community members. It'll encourage that person to do more work, but then it shows other people that it's possible to do. If people don't see these contributions happening, maybe they won't be encouraged to do it themselves. So this will start to build on top of itself when you provide that positive feedback loop. Great example is Benji Lampel from the astronomer team did a blog about how the people at Factory Pal made some great contributions to the provider. So this blog goes out. You don't have to do the blogs for every contribution, every little thing, but shout outs go a long way, both in social media, in your community channels. Send some swag. It's going to pay dividends. All right, so just to wrap this up, this was a great partnership, total home run. It continues to pay dividends for both sides. From a partnership perspective, it checked the boxes. We increased the reach, we enhanced functionality, and we saved resources by partnering with community members and the other team, and it improved our credibility. And to take my own advice, shout out to Pete DeJoy, Sam Bell, and Book Niederstick, who was one of the early contributors to this. All right.
Seamless handoff. Done. All right, so Kyle did a really great job of talking us through an example of cross-community collaboration. I'm going to take a little bit more of a nuanced look at how you can collaborate within your own community by adopting other open source tools, but without kind of needing to do a bunch of that additional facilitation with another community. Not to say that you shouldn't, but it's just an option, right? So this is a partnership with a company in the Data Hub community called Grab. Before we dig into that, I want to give you a little bit of extra context about what Data Hub is doing, just to set it up a little bit better. I think we should maybe this is like a drinking game, like we have to take a shot every time the slide comes up. Like we'd be
Yeah, be better.
Host, right? What's funny is that he and I both added this slide without knowing the other person did. And so like we're abusing it.
So
but,
nice we did it twice.
Yeah, exactly. So we are familiar with this as data practitioners. We know that our landscape is very complex. It's a lot to navigate. This makes onboarding new team members really difficult. It makes getting your stakeholders bought in really difficult. And it requires a huge mental map or mental model of how all of these things fit together. So Data Hub offers an open source solution for metadata management, kind of this single pane of glass over all of your data tools. So you can search and discover regardless of what platform or what tool you're looking at. So it could be a Looker chart, a Tableau dashboard, Airflow DAG. It could be a MongoDB data set. Whatever the technology, we make it really easy to plug and play. So you can not only one, search and discover, but also move on towards governing your data and making sure that you're doing things the data practitioner way. I don't know, that doesn't mean anything, but you know what I mean. Another piece of it is we do a really great job of automatically extracting lineage, so you can see the full end-to-end life cycle of your data, regardless of where it started or where it's transformed or consumed. You can spend more time kind of debugging data issues as they come up and spending less time, like my man Charlie. This is me for 2016 to 2018 while I was tech lead of a data team. I was constantly trying to map out all of the things anywhere. So Data Hub's a great tool for us to start surfacing those complexities, but it's also a platform that's built by data platform engineers or software engineers for other folks, and not quite necessarily doing a great job just yet of bringing in less technical users. So even though we're doing a great job of surfacing up with the complexity, we're kind of missing a key stakeholder in that equation. So cut back to our community collaboration. We had folks from the Grab team come to us and say, hey, we're getting some feedback that as we roll this out to our stakeholders, the process of documenting or enriching some of these core data entities is really, really counterintuitive and also intimidating to them. So if we take a quick look, this is an example of the old editing experience. For folks that are used to working in Markdown, this is actually probably a really great experience because you have the rendered Markdown on the right? But for folks who have never heard of Markdown, my favorite piece of feedback I've ever gotten was someone looked at this and said, it looks like it was built in the 90s. And I loved that, right? Because it's like really valid feedback, but we weren't talking to the right people or building for the right people. So with this in mind, the Grab team set basically came to us and said, hey, we're going to be building this solution within our own fork, but do you want to, we can contribute it back as well. So of course that was something where, as kind of like the PM or the community manager from that lens, I have to think about how do we minimize the amount of engineering effort or like risk that we take on without kind of knowing if this is the right thing to build. And also my own team is already stretched incredibly thin. We have 15 different deadlines, like there's a ton going on. So this is a great opportunity for us to say, cool, if you can drive it, we'll support you along the way. So in the planning process, we came together, we had folks from my team to kind of act as kind of like guides in the contribution process and help kind of make some of those design decisions. But we came together and kind of established our kind of key criteria. So first and foremost, of course, it needed to be open source. We are an open source platform. We can't implement something that people will suddenly need to pay for. It's just not gonna work. Just from a functionality standpoint, the end users wanted to make sure that they could tag and associate entities to one another. So if you're documenting something, maybe you wanna like @ a person and say, this is the expert here, or this relates to this other entity. The other thing is that we wanted it to be really seamless to upload images. I don't know how many times you guys have written out hyperlinks for images in Markdown. Not a fun experience. I get the brackets versus parentheses wrong every time. But then the biggest kind of functional requirement was that we needed to make sure that we were moving away from that Markdown first experience. Wanted to, in the biz, which I didn't know, it's called a what you see is what you get editor. So that's what we wanted to move towards. So as we were talking through this as a team, both teams from my core maintaining team, the team from Grab, we're all hypothesizing that as long as we have a migration strategy, it'll be easy for, we could just migrate away from Markdown stored text into JSON or whatever the format it needed to be for whatever we picked up. But there was something in my mind, I was like, maybe we should validate this. Maybe we should talk to people, right? So this is where we start to bring in our community as early as possible before we actually start building anything. So I sent out this poll to literally everybody in the community, And I'm anticipating like, no one's going to answer this. No one knows what we're talking about. Also, who cares if we're storing it in Markdown? We'll be able to migrate it, whatever. We had 120 people respond to it. It was one of the most highly responded surveys I'd sent out at that time. And the overwhelming majority was, please do not take away Markdown support. We've built out some really advanced ways of using it, these really nuanced use cases that ultimately like we would have just kind of shrugged off and ruined the experience for a ton of people and broken how they were adopting the tool. So that informed our design requirements or our open source tooling choice, which moved us into the development phase where we ultimately went with an open source framework called Remirror. Again, this is an example of where we are actually building this cross-community collaboration without needing to do a bunch of kind of like facilitation or a lot of like maybe unnecessary work to get it done, right? Like we can work on our own and build it out and make it successful there. So at the end of this, we end up with, so this is what we had before. Now we end up with this really nice, what you see is what you get experience. For folks who are used to working in wiki tools like maybe Notion or Confluence or, I mean, hell, even like Google Docs, this is a really intuitive experience for them. It's stored in Markdown on the back end that the user has no idea of that, right? So we also totally advanced the functionality of this. We now have syntax highlighted code blocks that are much easier to work with. We also have tables. How many times do you want to like build a table in Markdown? Again, nightmare. And also now the ability to start tagging other entities or other folks within the organization. So now we are still actively in our promotion phase. The way that we've approached this is so far is twofold. One, by making sure that we're giving like a ton of shout outs within our Slack, praising or like having full-on walkthroughs during our town hall sessions. And just over the next couple of months, we'll start moving into kind of like the blog posts and the more curated, here's how you do it, here's why we did it, et cetera. I had an absolute joy working with Amanda and Harvey from the Grab team. They showed so much dedication and just like came and drove the show. It was absolutely incredible. And there was something else that I was gonna say that I forgot. Oh no, now I remember. What's really also really amazing from this is that since we started communicating to folks that we went through this process, in the matter of a month, I've spun up 3 additional community-led processes or like workflows just like this because people understand that it's possible and they have kind of like a run book or like a framework to work within. So it's really gonna escalate how quickly we can start to solve really hard problems. It's gonna elevate the people in our community and also open up more opportunities for us to work with other communities as it comes.
All right. So to wrap this up, what are the benefits? You get extra resources, you increase reach, you enhance functionality, and you're going to increase the credibility as a product and as a player in the space. How do you accomplish it? You go through your discover phase, you're paying attention to the community, your planning phase, your development phase, your promotion phase, and that'll lead towards that community flywheel that will build on what you've done. But if you're just going to remember one thing, like I said, I probably could have stopped on the 3rd slide. Partnership's good. That's it. Thank you very much.